Hello and welcome back to the Art of Parenting. This is your host, Jeanne-Marie, and today I have Stella Grizont. And Stella, I was just telling her how I love her title of being a happiness expert. So we're going to talk all things happiness, but mostly about, I think, the work-family balance and being happy at our work. So Stella, thank you for making the time to be here with us, and welcome to the Art of Parenting.
Thank you so much. So excited.
Alrighty. So as I always like to get started, I'd love for my guests to define what the art of parenting means to them.
Ooh. Well, I ask myself regularly if I'm doing my job well. And when it comes to my children, I see my first job as keeping them safe. And I see safety not just from a physical perspective, but also an emotional perspective. So I spend a lot of time reflecting on how do I support them in feeling safe emotionally in their bodies so that they can be most regulated and learn and hear what I'm actually trying to say. So I guess safety is my first consideration, because I think everything else comes from them. If they don't feel safe in their bodies, they're not going to hear the lessons that I want to share or be able to connect or anything like that. So I think safety and love, they're probably this very intertwined. And then also, I see myself as creating freedom for my children to be themselves and to know themselves better. So how am I allowing them to hear themselves, learn about themselves, and make conscious choices for themselves? So
Beautiful.
Helping them cultivate that awareness.
Beautiful. And really to feel safe to be ourselves, which is beautiful and an art for sure. So Stella, before we get too involved in our conversation, I'd love for you to just introduce yourselves to our listeners, to our viewers. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to do the work that you're doing today.
Yes. Well, it's funny because when you said I'm a happiness expert, I wanted to pipe in and say, but I'm not happy all the time. and we're not supposed to be happy all the time.
No.
Emotion is always in motion, and it's just information. And there's so many benefits to positivity. And so that's why it's important for us to cultivate it. But and it feels good. But the way I came to my work is because in my career, I was feeling quite miserable, and I really wanted to crack that code and understand how is it that no matter how many jobs I change or career pivots I make, I still find myself feeling burnt out and exasperated and confused and just not satisfied. And so finally I realized one day, after consuming a jar of Nutella on the floor in a fetal position, one day I realized, maybe it wasn't that boss, or maybe it wasn't those clients, and maybe it wasn't that culture. Maybe, just maybe, it's been me all along. And not to blame me or anyone, but rather to recognize in that moment, somehow gracefully, I was able to recognize the power I had all along versus crush myself and self-blame. And that's what I most enjoy doing for my clients and my readers of my book, is helping them see the power they've had all along. Kind of like Dorothy could have clicked her heels in her journey through Oz. We actually can all click our heels and find our way home to ourselves, to be that person, to have that freedom, that safety in our bodies, and that technicolor experience in our lives right now. So once I realized that, I started to take my own medicine as a coach, and I had studied the science of happiness and well-being at the University of Pennsylvania. I was one of the earlier classes that, I got my master's basically in happiness, which is,
wow.
I was like, that's fun and cool. That was when I thought about how do I expand my education, I saw this program. I was like, oh, sign me up. I'll take a degree in happiness. So I got my degree in the science of happiness and well-being. And then I went into business, and I basically have, through the span of my career, coached, I don't know, probably nearly 2,000 people. And every year I speak, I don't know, 50 to 70 times a year. And I speak for corporate audiences, and I really enjoy just helping people work happier and live better. And it's not just about work. It just so happens that we spend most of our time at work. And I'm so excited to explore parenting with you, because I've actually never formally had a public conversation on parenting and applying these principles. So thank you for having me.
Right. Well, and I was fascinated to have you on, just to be able to explore that, because I think, parenting is a career in itself, and sometimes it makes us happy and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's hard. I mean, I think we become parents because it's something that we look forward to and so forth. But sometimes it's just, gives us some curveballs, and it's just difficult. And then put on top of that, parents who have a career, or who want to start a business, or who, are looking forward to go back to work, how to balance both jobs, really. Because I always say to parents that I work with, when they come back from their full-time job outside of the home, they come back to their second full-time job, right?
Exactly.
And sometimes, and I think also women in particular, get dealt a pretty, shitty card, if I may say so, about just, the career plan. And, what is it? There's a saying about, people expect us to be mothers as if we don't work, and work as if we're not parents, or something like that. And that's really hard. And I think women feel that more than men.
Yes.
I mean, maybe that's changing, just because men, I think, are becoming more involved in the whole parenting responsibilities. But yeah, I would love, first of all, I would love to kind of maybe unpack your method, right? Because you have the work happiness method, and I know that there's like certain steps that you take people through. And I'm curious in a very selfish way too, just because I've been going through some ups and downs in kind of my career. As I'm self-employed, have been for the past 13 years. I find great joy in doing what I do. And then sometimes it's like, oh my God, it's really hard to be by yourself and to do all that I do. So, I'd love for you to just share a little bit more about your method, and how what's the journey that you take people through?
Oh, well, thank you. And I just want to say that I have a very small team. And so I know the feeling of it feeling like very hard and lonely, and that balance that you spoke about, or lack of balance. I totally empathize with that. The method, the work happiness method is really 8. It's about learning 8 inner skills, and inner skills as opposed to hard skills, which have to do with the job and the responsibilities we have. Soft skills have to do with how we relate to each other. Inner skills have to do with how do we relate to ourselves. And that's why it surpasses just work. It's everywhere. It's us all the time, and us being clear on what is our vision of who we want to be? What are our values, and how do we steer ourselves to live purposefully? How do we, yeah.
So this could apply to a stay-at-home parent.
Absolutely.
Who's not working outside the home, like, because
Definitely.
for me, parenting is a full-time job. So I love that you're okay. Perfect. Wonderful.
And also, I think parenting is harder than any job you could basically do. Like, I was relieved to go back to work because I was like, this is so hard to do all day long.
Yes.
So I could not wait to go back to work because I needed a break. So there's these inner skills, and what I'm putting forth in the book is the idea that if we don't actually take the time to master these inner skills and to really start to master ourselves, then we're really screwed. I mean, if we look at what's been happening in the workforce, but also anywhere, people are disengaged. People are burning out. Like, we're just like the climate, we are burning out, and we are headed into an unsustainable direction. And if we want to flourish, if we want to see a positive future of work, if we want our children to be well, we have to go within and cultivate inner skills. And so in the book, I outline 8 of them.
Okay.
I'll just name them quickly, and then we can pop in and out of whichever ones sound good to you.
Okay.
So the first is resilience, and that's about how do you manage your mind and your mood, especially when things go off track. The second inner skill is clarity, and that's knowing what your vision is of success, whether that's a successful family, whether that's a successful career. It's really defining who are you when you're most alive, and what are the conditions that enable that and support that vision. Then that gives way to purpose and making decisions every day that align with your values so that you can live on purpose. And so your values are the guardrails for your decisions, for your thoughts, for your choices, so that you are moving towards that vision of you being most alive. So that's how we're working. We're starting with the vision, which is the destination, and then the values guide our decisions to stay in the right lane. And then the next inner skill is boundaries, which is a big one in parenting. And our boundaries are there to make it easier for us to be who we want to be. I see boundaries as an agreement that we make within ourselves, to an agreement to support ourselves in being who we want to be. So we have all these different parts of us that often are in conflict, and our boundaries are kind of the prioritization of, okay, I'm going to choose to say yes to these things because this is who I want to be. And these are the conditions that make it easier for me to say yes to whatever. After we figure out your boundaries, then I talk about, okay, well, how do we deal with the unknown and uncertainty, which is like the only steady thing in life. And especially as a parent, it's like, it's kind of the lesson we keep learning, or we keep, even from the moment you're pregnant, it's like, is it going to be okay? Like, you're waiting for the next test. And then, your children have all these surprises and personalities and, it's a master class in uncertainty. So what I talk about in how do you stay steady in the face of uncertainty and even flourish, I talk about really activating your play mindset. And so, which is also what children are so wonderful at teaching us.
Definitely.
is to remember how to play. And then the next inner skill that follows that is about discovery. And so when you're in your play mindset, you're setting yourself up to be more curious and open to possibilities. And then it's like, well, how do you actually discover what's next for yourself? Like, what do you put in Google? Who do you talk to? What do you ask for? So how do you discover what's next for yourself? And then we talk about after that, okay, well then usually when you figure out maybe you want to make a change or you want to explore something, you have to have a conversation with someone, maybe a difficult conversation. And so the next inner skill is about how do you have that difficult conversation so that it brings you and this other person closer together versus further apart? How do you approach that difficult conversation so that you have a transformational outcome that delights the two of you versus one that really starts to destroy your relationship or leaves you feeling empty or disappointed? And then the final inner skill is called refocus.
Refocus.
Refocus is about returning to yourself and what matters without pushing. So it's kind of the anti-grind approach to creating the life that you want.
Beautiful. And so all of these, from what I understand, kind of built on each other. We can't have one without the other. Like it's we're building the kind of this stairway, it feels like, of one on top of the other. Okay. I would love if we could go maybe into the one that sparked me personal interest was clarity, because I know for me sometimes, I can be super clear, and then other times I'm like, oh, if I knew what I'm supposed to do, or it's like it goes in waves. And then I think an important one for work, parenting, and all that is the boundaries. And I love that you talked about that, because I know for parenting, it is so important to know how important boundaries are for our children. Children need boundaries, right? They thrive on boundaries. It's not being a mean parent or a authoritarian parent to set the limits, because a child without limits is a child that is just overwhelmed, can't function properly. So I love that you talk about boundaries. So yeah, I would love if you could maybe touch a little bit deeper on those two, at least the clarity piece and the boundary piece. That would be great.
Love it.
Okay.
So the thing with success when it comes to our society, whether it's defining success in your career or your family, we usually start by defining, what do I want to achieve or own,
right,
or
right.
earn.
Right.
And that sounds totally rational, yet it doesn't guarantee us happiness and fulfillment. And so what we want to do is reverse engineer the way we think about success. The first thing we want to consider is, how do I want to feel and be in this career, in this family, in this home? First, we want to think about the state of being that we want to embody. And so if I'm thinking about work, it might be, I want to feel a sense of autonomy, creativity, influence. I want to feel like I'm contributing to something bigger, right? Those are just examples. When it comes to family life, it may be that I want to cultivate loving kindness. I want to be affectionate. I want to be respectful. I want to be organized. I want us to have fun, right? So those are just examples. So they're words that describe how we're feeling and being. And you can do this for many things. It could be your relationship with your partner, your relationship with your kids. It could be even thinking about your new home. For example, my husband and I actually did the exercise in chapter 2 and 3 of the book, which includes the vision and values for our new home. We're moving, like we're closing tomorrow on our home. And we sat down and we did this vision work for our new home. And so it helps you get clear on what you really, really want and what's most important. And then what it also does when you think about how do I want to feel and be, it actually opens up possibilities, because if, let's say, flexibility is important for you in your work, well, it opens up for you possibilities, because you realize, well, if I'm asked, how might I be flexible? How might I create flexibility in my schedule? Well, there's so many ways you can achieve that. If you want to be creative at work, well, there's so many ways for you to be creative. So what it does is it immediately helps you identify many ways for you to be the person you want to be. And so if you're feeling stuck, it's a really nice exercise for you to start to realize you have more choices, more power, and more options than you may feel. And the exercise is available for free actually at visiongenerator.com. Of course, I want you to buy my book, The Work Happiness Method, but if you just want this exercise, please go do it, at visiongenerator.com.
Okay.
And so we want to start there. And this helps if you're a solopreneur, if you have a boss, if you're contemplating how do I want to show up as a parent, it's the place to start, because it's starting from within and you already know this. You might not know, okay, what are my goals for the next quarter, but you already know how you want to feel and be. And then you choose goals to support that.
Right, right. And for me, this resonates a lot, because I truly believe that life is a choice, right? We're constantly making choices of how we're going to react to a situation, whether we say yes, whether we say no. Like and we are, we are the boss. Yet I feel that because, and I think more today, maybe there's just so much chatter around of maybe social media. We're comparing ourselves. We're seeing what others are doing and all that we tend to forget to ask ourselves that very question that you're saying about, how do I want to feel? Like, and I know I say this to especially the new moms that I work with is, what do I need right now? Because we're such wonderful caregivers that we, tend to care what our baby needs, what our partner needs, and we tend to forget. So I love that you bring it back to just having that inner dialogue of, how do I want to feel? And love that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I was shocked to realize just how much I knew about what I wanted early on. And
why do you think that is? Do you think that's just the way we're raised? I mean, and is that a female male thing, or what do you think?
Well, I think it does come probably from childhood. We know that if you have a stressful upbringing for whatever reason, so there was some sort of trauma. For me, I lost my father when I was 6 years old. My parents were immigrants. I mean, there was just so much going on. So for whatever reason, if you have a stressful childhood, most children want to attach to their caregiver. And so if your caregiver is stressed, you will, in order to maintain connection, most likely suppress your own needs and try to appease your caregiver, whether that's making sure that you're not acting out, you just go along with whatever is needed. And I think women and girls tend to do this more. The people-pleasing tendency for many people is actually a trauma response. It's a trauma response called fawning. And so that's when we're appeasing in order to make sure everyone's okay, because that makes us feel safer in our bodies. And while it was a supportive mechanism for us in childhood, in adulthood, it can actually be very detrimental.
Right.
And I think we all know that intuitively, but it also can actually impact our well-being and our health down the line. And so I think if you identify, or your listeners identify as people pleasers, and I think as caretakers and being more empathetic to other people's needs, it's your attention goes to everyone else's needs first. And so you bypass your own needs without even realizing it. And so it's attuning to yourself, and it's building that awareness, because automatically many people first attune outside of themselves versus within themselves. And so we want to remember and rebuild that connection to ourselves. Not because we don't care about other people, but actually tending to our own needs is a way of caring better for other people.
Yeah. And I will say, I think that's even more important for new parents, and maybe even more new mothers, especially through that postpartum period, because we just need a lot. And I think we're afraid to ask, or we have to power through and just push out a baby and get going and keep at it. And we forget to care for ourselves. So very important. Thank you.
Yeah. I remember when I was struggling with breastfeeding, and I was in Berkeley, California, and my lactation consultant was like encouraging me to pump and breastfeed and to get my milk supply up. And then my husband was pressuring me, and I was so exhausted and I was so confused. I was like, I don't know what I couldn't figure out what I wanted for my body, because I was concerned about my baby and what I thought was right. And I couldn't locate myself. And I remember that struggle of, where am I in all of this? And do I deserve a seat at the table? And is that okay? And I remember that struggle, and it's so hard when suddenly your identity is, when you're becoming a mother and like negotiating that. So I appreciate that you're calling that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And that must have been hard, because it's true where we think other people know better, but no,
they don't.
We know best, and we get to make those choices. And, I feel like there's so much pressure on women, for example, to breastfeed, but it's not for every mother. It's, it just isn't. And that's okay. And don't pressure yourself. Yes, it's the best food for your baby, and you're also a human, and, so.
Totally.
That's a whole other conversation, but thank you so much for sharing that, because I know a lot of women can relate to that. Even for other, other ways of caring our children, not only breastfeeding, of co-sleeping. I mean, there's so many, people are, they're telling you, poking at you, and you really have to do that clarity work,
exactly.
Right? Just like, I always, tell families, like I'm also a birth doula. And so I help them kind of make their birth plan. And that's, that's getting clarity, but also like, what's your parenting plan? Like how do you want to show up? Like what's, kind of have that vision, have that clarity. So it's beautiful.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you. Yeah. Wonderful. So let's talk about boundaries, because I think that was really important. You take us through the resilience, the managing, then the clarity, the purpose, but then the boundaries of I think, I mean, the way I hear it or interpret it is really because you're clear on what you want, you're now willing to say, no, that's not for me, or, no, I'm not going to go down that road, or, no, I'm not going to let my boss talk to me this way, or whatever those boundaries might be. So why is that so important in finding that joy and that happiness within ourselves?
Yeah, well, I think boundaries, what I realized and what's given me confidence in setting boundaries is remembering that boundaries are less about no and more about saying yes to what matters. And so it's saying yes to that vision, yes to how I want to feel and be. And so that powers the no, or that powers whatever the boundary is that I need to set up for myself. And so, especially when it comes to boundaries with children, I mean, it's, I wish I could say I'm a master at them with my children, but I'm still like a work in progress. And I say that in the book.
And you will be forever.
Forever. I think forever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's their job, right? Is to help you see your edges. But yeah, so it's important because, again, that goes back to honoring your own voice and your needs and your vision of who you want to be as a parent, or as an executive, or as a partner. Knowing that vision will help you set the boundaries that are right for you, and also support and protect your well-being. I mean, we know from research that there was this one study that was done in the 80s where they took a group of women who were getting their breast biopsied to identify if they had cancer. And researchers interviewed these women before their MRI, and they asked them about their childhoods, and they asked them about how they dealt with their emotions. And just based on psychological questions and assessments, not even seeing the results, they were able to predict cancer in 97% of the breast cancer cases.
Wow.
And how we relate to our emotions plays a big role in our well-being. It can lead to chronic disease if we're constantly bypassing our needs. And boundaries are one way that we can support ourselves in being who we want to be with greater ease. We don't want it to feel like an uphill struggle all the time for us to freely be who we want to be.
Beautiful. And so, I mean, it's so true. Like, it resonates with me what you say about the whole, when we suppress our needs, we get sick. Like,
yeah,
there's just no ifs and buts about it. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. I just lost a very dear friend of mine to, and I'm just convinced that she was in denial of what she needed, and it ended up killing her. Like, to me, like, what I wrote that next day is like, lies kill, right? Because she lied to herself, and it's just unfortunate. But anyways,
I'm sorry. Yeah,
that was tough.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Tough. So please, everybody, take care of yourself. Set your boundaries. Know what you need. Know what you want, and ask for it. Well, Stella, this has been just superb. We've loved this conversation. I would love to go into all of them, but I know we're for time. So just to kind of wrap up and bring it back to parenting, and more personal. You told me offline you have 3 children, 3 and 9. Two. I'm sorry. I looked at the age and I said 3. 2 children, 3 and 9. So if you were to go back 10 years ago when you were expecting your first child, what wise words would you tell yourself, knowing all that you know today?
Oh my God, this makes me want to cry. I would I would probably talk to myself and tell myself it's okay if the kids are upset. And setting boundaries is a good thing, right? Things that we already know now.
Right.
And I knew that crying was okay, but I hadn't yet, I hadn't known that in my body yet. So I read all the books and whatever, Respectful Parent, I knew all of it, but I wasn't able to be in my body yet. And so I would probably just have also said, like, trust yourself. I guess I would have, I guess I would have just also given myself some love. I mean, there's so much I wish I would have, but, and also to say, like, this is the most exciting, thrilling, loving ride.
It is. Yeah. Thank you for that. And I always ask that question too, just for those who are maybe not yet parents or who are brand new to it, because I feel when we hear from those that came before us, then we can get those wise words, at the beginning.
So that's a good question.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Well, thank you, Stella. This has been delightful. Any parting words that you would like to leave our listeners, our viewers with today?
Sure. I mean, I think we talked about, like, vision and boundaries, and you got to set the boundaries, but I also want to offer some compassion in that this isn't like a quick fix. It's something that you keep practicing over and over again. It's not, we don't go to the gym once and suddenly we're fit. And so I just want everyone to know that it's a process and it's all about progress. It's not about arriving at a certain place. And to be so gentle with yourself, because things are so hard right now and we're all doing the best that we can, and just to offer ourselves some loving kindness, because like you said, parenting is a full-time and probably the hardest and most important job there is. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And the work everyone's doing, and raising humans and creating all these new universes here. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you for being here and sharing all of your wisdom. It's been delightful. Thank you.
Thank you.